What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, and this is the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G. And in this video, I'm going to be going over my top 5 favorite and least favorite things about this device. So let's get started. Now I'm going to first begin with my favorite things, and then I'll save the worst things for the second half of the video. Now coming in at number 1, my favorite thing about this device definitely has to be the processor that we're getting with it. Now this phone features the Qualcomm Snapdragon 778G 5G processor. So that is a mid-range processor from Qualcomm. Of course, they saved their top-of-the-line processors for Samsung's S series, such as the S22, S22 Plus, and S22 Ultra. But the 778G 5G not only is 5G compatible, hence the name of the processor and the name of the phone, but it also does run really well. Now, I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 5, and I'll show you the scores in that test right now. But essentially, I got a single core score of 776 and a multi-core score of 2906. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of whether or not the Galaxy A73 5G is going to indeed be a performance upgrade for you. Because it is possible that the phone you have right now could be more powerful, especially if you happen to have a slightly older S-series phone and maybe you're not considering upgrading to another S-series device. Just keep in mind that this phone might be more powerful or less powerful compared to what you have, but for what it is as a mid-range device meant to be a bit more affordable compared to their top-of-the-line handsets, I think they made a great choice with the processor that we are getting. So things run extremely smooth here. If you're going to be doing any sort of social media, web browsing, text messages, phone calls, video viewing, all that stuff will be great on this phone. Even playing games on the device will run very well with this processor. Now, of course, if you want to take things up a notch, you can move over to the S series where you are going to be getting much more powerful devices. But for most people, you don't really need that much power. So what we're getting here with the Galaxy A73 5G most likely will be adequate for the majority of people out there. Now coming in at number 2 is that this phone does have NFC. Now, we're in 2022, and it's really pretty surprising that NFC is even a feature that's noteworthy at this point, because you'd think that every phone would have it. But that unfortunately is not the case. There are devices in Samsung's A series that don't have NFC. Now, of course, all of Samsung's flagship phones in the S series always have NFC, but again, keep in mind that not every A series phone does, so I am really glad that the A73 5G does indeed have NFC. So with NFC, you can use your device to do tap and pay, you can use it with Samsung Pay, so that's a great feature to have, and any device that I have that has this compatibility, I always use. It's kind of rare nowadays that I actually have to pull out my credit card when paying for something because I just use my device to tap and pay. Now, of course, when I review lower end phones, unfortunately, they typically don't have NFC. So it is at least nice that the A73 5G, despite being a mid-range device, does have NFC on board. Now, my third favorite thing about this phone definitely has to be the display. Now with this device, we're getting a very large 6.7-inch display. It does feature Corning Gorilla Glass 5, which makes it extra durable, and the display technology is Super AMOLED Plus. Now to make things even better, it features a 120Hz refresh rate, so everything runs very smoothly. Definitely a nice premium touch to have there. The display is 1080p, we have a PPI of 393, a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, and an 87% screen-to-body ratio. So this display is excellent for content consumption. Whether you're looking at pictures, reading articles, or watching videos, you're able to see all of that content on such a large canvas. So this phone's display really is excellent. I can't compliment it enough. And Samsung definitely did a great job in this department. Now number 4 definitely has to be the storage that we're getting here with the device. Now, this device is offered in multiple storage configurations, but you can get it in either 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes. And the device is also compatible with microSD card expansion. Now, unfortunately, some of the higher-end Samsung phones in the S series actually don't offer microSD card expansion, so that's definitely something that's worth keeping in mind. So if you get 128 gigabytes with this phone compared to an S22, for example, then at least you can further expand that storage with this device, whereas with those higher end phones, you are limited at just what is on board. But keep in mind, as time goes on, software continues to take up more and more space on these various devices. So it wasn't too long ago that you could get by with no problem with 32 gigabytes or even 64 gigs. But again, since apps are getting bigger and bigger and pretty much everything is taking up more and more space, pretty much at this point I would say 128 gigabytes is kind of the minimum, because if you have anything less, then you most likely are going to have to deal with the storage filling up pretty quickly. So while I do wish the base model of this device did give us at least 256 gigabytes of storage, 128 is still adequate, and I'm glad that we at least have that. And for my fifth favorite thing about this device, it definitely has to be the various cameras that we are getting here with the phone. Now keep in mind, this is a mid-range phone from Samsung, so you certainly shouldn't expect to get every camera feature that you'd get with a more higher end device from the company, but at the same time, we are getting a lot here. So the first thing is that we have a 32 megapixel front-facing camera situated in this hole punch, and then we have a quad camera set up on the back with a 108 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can capture images at up to 123 degrees, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode, and a 5 megapixel macro camera for close-up images. And this phone does support 4K video recording for both the rear and front cameras. So we're not getting quite the best cameras that Samsung has to offer, but at the same time, we are getting some pretty solid camera specifications and a lot of features too. Now taking a closer look at how things are in the camera app, here's how things are with the standard camera. Now keep in mind that in this mode, if you want to take a full 108 megapixel photo, you do have to go up here and select that, so that is its own setting. But then from there, you can take photos in that full megapixel count. So that's pretty awesome. Now then from here, we can move over to the ultra wide angle camera so that we can fit a lot more content into the frame. And then we can also move over to the More tab where we can access the macro camera for close-up images. And then we can head over to portrait mode as well to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. Now, of course, also flipping around to the front-facing camera, we can do the same thing. So there's me right there. We also have an option for group selfies, which is pretty cool. And of course, you can take standard selfies as well. But now that I've gone over my top 5 favorite things about the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G, let's now go over my top 5 least favorite things about the phone. Now keep in mind, in general, I think the Galaxy A73 5G is an excellent device. Samsung gives us a lot of value here for the money, and I really can't ask for much more. But at the same time, there is still plenty of room for improvement, and there also are some caveats that I think you definitely should be aware of prior to getting this phone, just so that there aren't any potential surprises. Now the first thing is that there is no wireless charging. Now, I understand that wireless charging is a feature that typically is reserved for more higher end devices, but we've also had wireless charging for nearly a decade at this point, and I'm surprised that we don't have it on more mid-range phones. Now, there are no A-series devices in Samsung's lineup that do have wireless charging, but I feel like for what you do pay for this device, they should have included it. And especially since wireless charging isn't really some sort of gimmicky extra feature that barely anyone would use. I personally use wireless charging all the time with any device that supports it. So if they did have wireless charging on this phone, I would literally be using it every day. The second downside with this device is that it doesn't support Samsung's DeX desktop mode. Now, DeX has been out for a while now. I believe it was launched with the Galaxy S8, and you can still get it with the various S-series phones. But essentially, with that software, you plug in your device directly into a display, and it turns your phone interface into a desktop interface. Now, this is kind of a specialty feature, and I don't think everybody uses it, that's for sure. But at the same time, you might be used to seeing DeX with Samsung's flagship devices, and you'll most likely be surprised to see that a phone like the A73 5G doesn't have it. Especially because I see all the time in the comment section people asking if this A-series phone or that A-series phone has DeX, and the unfortunate news is that no, there is no DeX here with the Galaxy A73 5G. And it's too bad because I think this phone is plenty powerful to run DeX. It's just a matter of Samsung choosing not to include it. Most likely because they want to give you an extra reason to buy one of their more higher end devices. Now coming in at number 3 is that there is no 3.5mm headphone jack. Now I know that there are a lot of people that have moved away from using a traditional headphone jack because they use wireless headphones at this point, but at the same time I do know that there are plenty of people that still have wired headphones and they're not looking to get rid of them just because phones don't support that anymore. Now thankfully, if you do want to use wired headphones with this device, you can buy an adapter to plug into the USB-C port. but at the same time, nothing beats having a dedicated 3.5mm headphone jack. And it is especially disappointing because I feel like they could have easily included it here, and it really doesn't take up that much space overall in the general body of the phone. It's simply a choice that they've made, and most likely they're doing this because they want us to buy more of their Samsung Galaxy Buds. So it might not necessarily be a deal breaker for most people that there is no 3.5mm headphone jack, as it definitely isn't for me. I've pretty much moved on to wireless headphones as well. But on the other hand, if you're really looking for a device with a headphone jack and you're expecting this phone to have one, then unfortunately it is nowhere to be found here. Now coming in at number 4, this might be expected already considering how slim the box is that the phone does come in, but there is no wall adapter included in the box. Now, there's multiple downsides to this. Now, thankfully, we do at least get a charging cable, and it's a double-sided USB-C charging cable, but at the same time, if you don't have any sort of USB-C wall adapter or a computer that has a USB-C port, then you're definitely gonna have to go out and buy a wall adapter. Now, another thing worth considering too is that this phone has a very large battery, which is great, but the only downside is that if you're not using a fast charger with this phone, then it is going to take quite a long time to recharge that battery. Now, this phone can charge at up to 25 watts, which is great. That's very quick, and you'll definitely notice that it can recharge pretty rapidly due to that compatibility. But at the same time, if you're not using a charger that's compatible with 25 watts, then you're not going to get the full charging speed out of this device anyway. So I know that one of Samsung's claims is that they don't include a charger because you likely already have a bunch of chargers, but it's most likely that the chargers that you have are not compatible with the full 25 watt fast charging, which means that you'll have to go out and get one on your own. And most of the generic USB wall adapters that you find may be included from Apple for a long time, for example. If you can recall that tiny little wall adapter that they had, that's only 5 watts. So considering that most of these lower end generic wall adapters are 5 watts and this phone can charge up to 25 watts, that essentially means that if you go with one of those cheaper, older wall adapters, you're going to be getting 1/5 of the charging speed out of this device. So that's really not even that realistic, especially like I said, considering that this phone has such a large battery to begin with. And coming in at number 5, for my least favorite things about this phone, that is the build quality. Now, this is a little bit nitpicking, but at the same time, just be aware that this phone is made completely out of plastic, besides the display, which is glass. So if you are moving from maybe an older S-series phone, maybe you have a Galaxy S8 or S9, and you're not looking to spend the amount that's necessary to buy a newer S-series phone, then just know that if you're moving to this device, then the general materials will be a downgrade. Now, the phone does look very stylish, and it does look and feel of good quality, that's for sure. So I don't think Samsung could have done any better with the materials that they had to work with. But again, keep in mind that you're not going to be getting the same level of durability as you would with a phone that's made out of metal and glass. This material, I do like that it doesn't pick up really any fingerprints or anything, but I can definitely see this getting pretty scratched up as time goes on. So I don't really see the materials as being a deal breaker necessarily, but at the same time, I would definitely recommend getting a case of some sort to pair with this phone as soon as you get it. But this concludes my video on the top 5 best and worst things about the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is a great phone. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's an excellent value from Samsung. But overall, those top 5 least favorite things about it are things that I think you at least should be aware of prior to getting the device so that you know exactly what to expect. But I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.